Welcome into the Beat Sessions, your place for all things music. I'm your host, Mitchell Weary. Let's talk about Primal Scream and their new record, Come Ahead. They released that on November 8th. This is the 12th studio album for the Scottish outfit and their follow-up to 2016's Chaosmosis. And after 8 years, I was very excited to see Bobby Gillespie back with this outfit. He's joined by longtime guitar player Andrew Inez, as well as drummer Darren Mooney, who joined the band in 1997, and their bass player, Simone Butler, who joined in 2012, just laying down some pretty mean bass licks on this record. It's definitely a highlight for me. But excited to talk about this band. I would argue that Primal Scream, one of the few bands throughout the entirety of their career that has unapologetically made music on their own terms. Like, they don't give a damn about expectations from fans, from critics, from anyone. And I applaud that. We talk about it on the channel from time to time, but I think that in order to truly come into your own as an artist, you need to ignore the outside. You need to make art for yourself that is a reflection of, who you are, whether it's, the person you are at that time, the person you want to be. It should be about you. And if that resonates with people, then, that's where your success is. And that's what truly defines great art, in my opinion. And I would say that for the most part, throughout the course of their career, Primal Scream has put out art that's resonated with people in a lot of ways. Maybe not immediately, but in hindsight, there's a lot of records that you look at critics and, the criticism of, especially some of their earlier stuff. And there's a newfound love, a newfound appreciation for that music as time has gone by. I think that there's, for the sake of argument, two big types of music fans. There's the type that's focused on genre. And a band like Primal Scream can be very frustrating. Like, if you like a band because you appreciate a style that they've developed and you want them to stay within that pocket while, experimenting a little bit, trying to differentiate their sound, this is not the act for you. But it's what I love about them. And I know a lot of people that, they have a broader taste in genres, in styles of music. And there can be big payoff for a band like this. It's very exciting. The anticipation that you feel knowing that a band that can throw anything your way announces that they're going to put out a new album. You're like, what am I going to hear? It's very exciting. And that's, what really got me going for this new record, especially after almost a decade. Unfortunately, I feel like Come Ahead falls just a little short. And we're going to get into that. I want to kind of lead this thing off and tie it together by talking about their first four records, talking about that authenticity that's there with them, making music on their own terms. Because they start their career off by dropping Sonic Flower Groove. Their debut record really captures the essence of the 60s, jangle pop, what the Byrds put on the map. It's an album that at its time was not very well received by critics or fans, but you read about it now and people talk about how it's a pretty solid debut record. They, deal with a little bit of discord within the band because of the lack of success. They put out their self-titled second record, which has a harder rock and roll sound, and they deal with the same issue. And then they start getting into acid house, and their third record, Screamadelica, it's a total 180 from what they've done with their first two projects, but it puts them on the map. It makes them a household name, and it really is one of the landmark records of the 1990s. I mean, it is just an explosive wall of sound that just comes right at you from start to finish. An incredible record. And you would think that with the success, the newfound, fan base that you have, because, I know most of my electronic dance friends, they're not necessarily into rock and roll. So knowing that you've captured that type of fan base, and then you come out three years later with Give Out But Don't Give Up, which is basically a blues record. I love it. And it's an album too that at the time people were like, what the hell is going on? But in hindsight now, we look back on that record and it's like, that was a really good effort. It's just not what we expected these guys to do based on the success of its predecessor. And so to Bobby and crew, I've always, I applaud you guys once again for keeping all of us on your toes and doing what you want to do. I discovered this band with the record Exterminator, and I wanted to mention that record and Screamadelica both because I think that this new record, Come Ahead, is unfortunately a safe combination of what the band was trying to do on those two records. And when I got into Exterminator, that came out in 2000. They came out a couple years after Refuse, The Shape of Punk to Come. And that record for me just blew my lid off, as well as most of the people that I know. Most people that I grew up with, we were punk kids, really into that sound. But as the 90s went on and as you got closer to the year 2000, punk became very pop oriented. And if you read the liner notes of that Refused record, they talk about how if hardcore and punk is going to remain anti establishment, then it needs to create some type of variance, some type of differentiation from what's going on in the mainstream sound. And that's exactly what they did with that record. I mean, and that record was the first time I really got into anything with an electronic kind of sound. And I was just fascinated by it, again, as were many of my friends. And I remember being on a bus trip for a soccer match down to Phoenix and talking about that record. And a buddy of mine bust out Exterminator. And he's like, you need to check this out. And that record, I mean, just amazing. It is just hard in your face. Like the political edge to it was something different coming off of Screamadelica, which I appreciated. And, once I went back and listened to that record, Exterminator was filling that hole, that void that I felt coming off of being a punk kid, but growing into different musical tastes and wanting something more. And the influences on that record, I mean, you talk about the Chemical Brothers helping out with production on that record. Dan the Automator helped out there. You have Kevin Shields from My Bloody Valentine that helped out with production on that record. And David Holmes as well, who worked on a few tracks. And David Holmes is at the helm working with Bobby on this new record. And I think, again, it kind of served to its detriment. It's unfortunate the way that this record worked out. I feel, now that I've mentioned Screamadelica and Exterminator, again, this record, knowing that most people agree that those are probably their two biggest efforts, their two biggest landmark efforts. After 8 years, bringing those sounds together, bringing together the fun, funky electronic element, but also, doing something political, which is not something that I feel like Bobby has been consistent with over the years. I would argue he hasn't been the best lyricist either. So that's where this record it just in so many ways falls flat for me. I feel, based with like the title itself, Come Ahead. It's an expression when someone in Scotland, when someone tries to start a fight with you and you want to accept, you say, come ahead. And I'll pull that album cover up too, because Bobby's father, unfortunately, passed away last year. That's him right there. I love, that's a great photo. And his father involved in politics, involved with unions. I appreciate him trying to pay homage to his dad. And I appreciate him trying to throw down some type of commentary in a world where, the political landscape is very disjointed and a lot of people are very upset by a number of things that are going on in the world, right? But it doesn't, lyrically, I don't feel like it ventures into that loud, in-your-face, bombastic territory that Exterminator did. And from a music standpoint, I know that electronic dance music, it's all about developing a rhythm, finding your groove, and then you experiment around that, work around that with different elements. But a lot of these songs, just the energy, I would argue, falls flat on them. And I feel that the instrumentation working around them feels predictable. It feels very recycled. And so many of these tracks feel very drawn out. I mean, this is an album that comes in with a pretty long runtime. I think it's sitting at almost an hour at 11 songs. And if you stream this thing, there's Ready to Go Home, Love Insurrection, Heal Yourself, Innocent Money, Deep Dark Waters. There's all basically radio edits of those tracks that follow the listing on it. And I would argue that a handful of those, I think Deep Dark Waters don't touch that, but the rest of those tracks, and Ready to Go Home, actually, I think is an amazing opener. I think it's a really great song. But Love Insurrection, Heal Yourself, Innocent Money, they're so drawn out. They're so overblown. I think both Love Insurrection and Innocent Money are longer than 6 minutes, and they just don't need to be. I mean, there's nothing that those songs do within that time frame that makes it worth sitting down and listening to. I mean, I've listened to this record 4 times now. It's a big part of what took me so long to get this review out is I wanted to like it. I wanted to dig it. I kept playing it because I felt like there was something that I was just missing. But at this point now, I feel like they're the ones that are missing it. And it's unfortunate because they're really, there's a lot of great stuff growing on here. Like, I think the rhythm section is fantastic. I think Simone and Darren are absolutely crushing it. I think that if the compositions were more concise, their rhythmic energies would be more value. And I think that in a tighter space, some of the fun instrumentation that gets worked in could have had more value. It could have, held more ground versus just being dragged out into some 6.5 minute song that really could be about 3.5 to 4 minutes. Unfortunately, I think that this record is there's a lot going on that is solid, but the movement of it is just too disjointed, and there's just too many pockets where you hit rough spots where the music, it isn't engaging, it isn't compelling the way that you're used to seeing these guys be that way. And it's unfortunate. And who even knows, like 20 years down the road, there could be someone like me talking about, their early stuff. And, this could end up being, that classic record that people reflect on. It's like, maybe we were too judgmental. But I think that, given the energy of Exterminator, given the prowess of Screamadelica, and trying to find a combination of those two sounds, I really think that's what he's doing here. What the band as a whole is trying to do here. It's unfortunate. There's a lot of good material there, and what they're putting down here as a whole just falls flat. It starts off with Ready to Go Home, a great opener. I love the big gospel vocal that opens this thing up. It's unfortunate that as the album progresses that, this album banks on that a lot. And I think a big part of that, Bobby, not necessarily the best lyricist, definitely not the best singer that I've ever heard. And there's some tracks on this record where his voice sounds pretty rough. It's unfortunate, but Ready to Go Home is a great way to open this thing. Just like ushers in a funky riff with multiple layers of percussion. That gospel vocal carries throughout the song. I think that's a great component. Pulsating synths. And this is a track that it's what you kind of expect from an electronic song. 4.5 minutes long, starts off with the elements, and then you just get this slow build of components until it reaches banger status. And by the end, it's like, yeah, let's get it. Let's get into it. And you would hope for more energy coming off the second track, Love Insurrection. But in my opinion, it just falls flat. You get this lo-fi percussion that's brief. It ushers in this mellow, soulful guitar, shuffling thick bass. It's got this big neo soul feel. Like I was reminded of Black Pumas, Leon Bridges, the stuff that he's done with Khruangbin. Kind of felt like the song, worked into that territory. You get this light atmosphere, and there's a lot going on. There's jazz flair, there's pop elements, disco elements. There are components, a lot of fun stuff that I admire and that I noticed, and I was like, all right, but it just never seems to coalesce. And in 6.5 minutes, it's a lot to get through. And for a second track, coming off the energy of Ready to Go Home, I think it's unfortunate, especially because it leads into Heal Yourself, which is your third track. You get these meandering synths that open up a track that, it's got this ambient drifting quality, but I feel that that's all it does. The vocal and rhythm hit to give it some legs, but this is a song that just never catches for me. And again, it's another one that I think it comes in at about 5.5 minutes. There's nothing that happens that is captivating, that really captures you. And 5.5 minutes is a long time to do something in a song. And it's unfortunate that this song really doesn't go anywhere. Innocent Money, your fourth track. If you could capture opulence in a sound, this song does it. And I think that's what's so brilliant about it. I think unfortunately, the lyrics fall very flat on this track. I think that this is an example, talking about Madonna last night, the 40th anniversary of Like a Virgin, and how people criticize that song, saying that, lyrical irony doesn't match well with pop music. Well, I disagree. I think it's a very difficult thing to do, but I think a song like a Virgin, or I think of Don Henley, All She Wants to Do Is Dance, laying down solid social criticism on top of a catchy pop groove, I laugh. Like, I used to play that song so much when I DJ, All She Wants to Do Is Dance. And it's one of those ones that's like, you just feel like no one's ever really listened to the lyrics. And that's what always kind of like just made me get a kick out of dropping that song. This is a track, Innocent Money, that has that potential. But again, I don't think the lyrics live up to what the music is doing so brilliantly, and that's unfortunate. But I think sonically this is a really cool track. A lot of disco flair. You get pulsating synths, funky rhythms. It's a cool track musically. Your fifth song, Melancholy Man, is probably the most forgettable track on this record. It's unfortunate, especially like coming, at the halfway point roughly on this record, just needing something, needing some life, some energy, some better material from this record. And this song comes on, and it's just got this simple piano, psychedelic guitars to capture the mood. I do appreciate that about it. The title is spot on with the music that follows. There's a bit of saxophone that brings some life to this track, but for the most part, it's just another song that's really drawn out and that doesn't achieve what I think it sets out to do ultimately. Your sixth song, Love Ain't Enough. Drums open. This is just a good rockin' track. And I love the back and forth between the bass and the guitar on this song. I think that's a really fun component. Something with the pulse though, finally, like it was nice to like just feel that good energy. I think that the strings, the backing vocals that work in are fun. They create this bit of frenzy. This is one where, vocally Bobby is suffering a little bit. I think, doesn't sound that great from his angle, but overall it is a solid track. Circus of Life, layered percussion, groovy bass, and a breezy acoustic rhythm on your seventh song. It's got this unique blend of Western and world percussion that I absolutely appreciate. It's definitely got a unique flair. I love that the way that this song breaks down momentarily around the 4-minute mark, and then the coda that builds off of that is pretty exceptional too. Definitely a highlight for me. False Flags is your eighth song. You get these chimey synths that usher in strings that have a bit of an Eastern drive. This chill, thick bass is going to work in. Kind of had this shoegazy guitar element, but it's basically just this spoken word tale about two friends, one of them going off to war, and it's so bland. It is, if you're going to write a drawn out song like this, to write something with such drab lyrics and just a drab tone as well to it. Like this thing, like I stuck it out for the first two listens, but I mean, the third and fourth time around on this record, I just skipped it. I was not pleased with this song and the energy given the material, the content of what's going on in the lyrics. And I think that from a storytelling standpoint, the lyrics just overall could be better as well. Deep Dark Waters is your ninth track. I love this song. This is a great track. Big post-punk new wave feel. It's going to take us to just like a darker feeling mood. It's got a really catchy groove though. The instrumentation builds well. There's no reliance on the big gospel harmonies that are ubiquitous throughout this record. And I think that, Bobby is just banking a lot on that to kind of compensate for where his voice has gone at this point in his life. This song stands out to me for that reason. It's not playing with, all of the same, all the same instrumentation and all the same, tools that he's working with on this record. It's going to lead into The Center Cannot Hold, which I think is another exceptional track, your penultimate song. Driving acoustic guitars create a foundation for just a funky driving bass. I love the up-tempo nature of this song. It's a great little run of tracks on this record, and I like the way that this album really does improve towards the back end. And then it finishes with Settler Blues, which you get the simple psychedelic riff that meanders. It's going to carry this song. It's a 9-minute song, and it falls into that category of False Flags where, you get Bobby telling a tale, talks about English imperialism, the oppression of the Scottish. And, it's nothing that you haven't read in a history book. That's what's unfortunate about it. He could have taken a fun, unique angle. I would say that at least with False Flags, like he's trying to create some type of narrative, some type of story. Now, that's just my personal opinion on whether or not that resonates and that hits. But, Settler's Blues just feels like a 9-minute history lesson to very just dull music. And like lyrically, it's a dull exploration of something that hits home personally for me. Like most of my family, Irish and Scottish, the oppression of the English over centuries is something that, in my time that I spent in Ireland and the people that I know, there's still frustration there about that. It's something that will probably never go away, but you don't feel that energy. You don't feel that frustration in the song. It fails to capture that. And I think it just, as an album closer, it just kind of hits as a dud for me because of that. This is a record that, it's from a band that I really like, that I appreciate. They've done a lot of great things throughout the year. throughout the years, excuse me. But this thing, while it does a lot well, falls flat in so many other regards that I just got to pass on the wax on this thing. I think it's worth a stream, and I appreciate your thoughts and comments. See what you guys think about this record, because I always love a little disagreement in the comments section. It's fun to have some back and forth about why you guys like stuff when I tend to not like it, or even vice versa. But for me, I'm going to give this thing a 6.3 out of 10. I just don't think the quality components of this record bring enough to the table to match what is, just a really drawn out, oftentimes dull affair. But if you check this record out, I hope you find it enjoyable. I hope you find this review helpful as well. Please like this video, share it, subscribe to the channel, do all the things to help me blow this project up in 2024. Tune into Classic Wax on Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll see you next time on the Beat Sessions.